There is systemic racism in this country, and people of color are paying a terrible price because of it. The elites who have instigated this moral crime deserve to be exposed for what they've done. The sooner we call attention to them, the sooner we expose their regressive ideas, the sooner we live in a more just society. No truth, no peace. Here's how bad it is. At Columbia University, Black students have a separate graduation from white students. In many other colleges, Black students are encouraged to live in their own separate dorms. Students in many New York City government schools are separated by color during the school year. State governments put regulations in place that make it harder for minorities to start businesses. A national museum declares hard work and ambition to be white values. One of America's two major political parties assumes that many Black people are incapable of obtaining a driver's license or an ID card. In Oregon, Black students are told that math is a white construct, all but guaranteeing failure in this essential skill. In Baltimore, less than 10% of minority students can read at grade level, all but guaranteeing failure in this essential skill. In Oakland, no student is allowed to get a D or an F. Instead, everyone is simply promoted to the next grade whether they know the material or not. City councils demonize their own police departments, then vote to cut police budgets. Crime and murder skyrocket. The victims are almost all minorities. Prosecutors refuse to prosecute hardened criminals. Instead, they let the criminals back on the streets to prey on law-abiding, hard-working citizens, again, mostly Black people. That's only a few of many examples. It's shocking, but commonplace. Every day in every major city, people of color are living in this oppressive, patronizing environment. These prejudices, literally prejudgments, make it more and more difficult for Black people and other minorities to improve their lives, the very opposite of what the goal should be. In other words, the very people claiming to have Black people's and minorities' best interest at heart are instituting the very policies and attitudes that are holding them back. Sounds like systemic racism to me. And it makes you think that we're not moving forward as a pluralistic, equal opportunity nation, but backward into Jim Crow. Now, here's the kicker. It's not those horrible, nasty, bigoted, misogynistic, authoritarian nationalists on the right who are imposing these crushing rules and policy prescriptions. It's the woke left. The side that I revered as a beacon of tolerance. The side that I thought was on the right side of history up until a few years ago. In fact, I was so committed I got a Black Lives Matter tattoo. I still have it. But then I had to face reality. It's the ideology of the left that has set back young students of color with lower education standards, that calls for pulling cops out of high crime areas and replacing them with social workers, that states that skin color is more important than character, more important than anything. Yes, it is the woke left that is systemically racist, not America. The race hoax epidemic is proof. There have been dozens of these hoaxes over the last few years. Nooses on garages, the N-word on dorm rooms, this is MAGA country taunts on cold city streets. Virtually every one of them has been faked. The demand for racism exceeds the supply. If racism against Black people or any other minority group was rampant, you wouldn't have to fake it to convince people how bad things are. Did anyone fake racism in the South in the 1950s? But there is so little now that the race-obsessed woke left has manufactured unconscious racism and microaggressions to fool people into believing America is systemically racist. That's not to say racism doesn't exist. Of course it does. There will always be small-minded people, but their numbers are as small as their minds. And in case you're thinking of George Floyd, please know that even Minnesota's leftist attorney general admitted the incident had nothing to do with Floyd being Black. My father and millions of Africans didn't immigrate to America so that they could live in a racist society. They immigrated so that they could have opportunities that were only available to them here. So, to all the leftists out there, I understand why you believe what you believe. I was once one of you. But it's time to ask yourself some questions. Is it really helping Black people to tell them they're not as responsible for their actions as anyone else? Isn't it condescending, if not outright bigoted, to expect less from somebody purely based on their race? Isn't it clear that we should judge each person on their merits, not their skin color? Wouldn't that do more to create an equitable society than 100 government programs? Yes, there really is systemic racism, and it's hurting the country, but it's not coming from the direction you think. Once you realize that, everything changes. I'm Mom Lepanobi for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.
Every single day, someone of prominence on the left, a politician, a cable news host, an entertainment figure, accuses someone on the right of being a racist. Here are typical examples. MSNBC host Chris Matthews said this: "The age of Jim Crow managed to find a new habitat in the 21st century Republican Party." Comedian Seth Meyers told his late-night audience that Republicans traffic in open racism. Tennessee State Representative London Lamar, a black woman, announced that the entire state of Tennessee is racist, period. This was just after she was elected in Tennessee. The left calling the right racist isn't new. It's been going on for decades. Republican presidents Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush, his son George W. Bush, were all accused of being racist. And of course, from the left's perspective, racist is essentially Donald Trump's middle name. To call someone a racist is a very serious charge. A racist is a person who believes that one race is inherently superior or inferior to another. It's not intelligence, character, or values that determine an individual's worth. It's his or her skin color. To say that racism is foolish and stupid, not to mention evil, is to understate the case. But according to most Democrats, Republicans are that stupid and that evil. So let's examine some conservative policies to see if they are indeed racist. If they are, then the left has a valid complaint. And if they're not, then the left is lying. The long-standing conservative opposition to affirmative action is a good place to start. It was Democratic President John F. Kennedy who in 1961 first used the term affirmative action. But affirmative action in the way we think of it now wasn't implemented until 1970, during the administration of a Republican president, Richard Nixon. The theory was that, because of historical discrimination, blacks were at a competitive disadvantage to other races and ethnicities. To erase that disadvantage, standards that most blacks presumably couldn't meet had to be lowered. One could make the case that this policy had some utility when it was first put in place. But that was a long time ago. The conservative position is that blacks have repeatedly proven they can compete with anyone without the benefits of lower standards. There are countless examples of black success in every field at every level. The policy is no longer necessary. But the conservative argument goes further. Study after study shows that, in the case of college admissions, affirmative action hurts more blacks than it helps. By lowering admission standards for blacks and some other minority students, colleges set many of these students up for failure. They get placed in schools for which they are not prepared. And high black dropout rates confirm this view. How could it be otherwise? If academically unprepared white students were admitted to Ivy League schools, they too would be set up to fail. Conservatives believe blacks and other minorities are every bit as capable as whites of succeeding as engineers, surgeons, policemen, businessmen, lawyers, and college students. And therefore, lowering standards for blacks is unnecessary as well as insulting. Yet for this belief, conservatives are called racist. The irony, of course, is that those who accuse conservatives of being racist believe blacks and other minorities are not as capable as whites of succeeding and therefore still need affirmative action, almost a half century after it was first implemented. Let's look at another issue where this contrast between conservatives and those who accuse them of being racist is even more starkly drawn: voter ID. Conservatives say America should require every voter to present an ID when voting, just as European countries do to help keep their elections honest. Are all these democracies racist? Of course not. Yet the accusers say that conservatives who support voter ID are racist. Why do they say this? Because, they argue, it's really a ruse to prevent blacks and other minorities from voting, since many of them just aren't capable of acquiring an ID. Can you get more condescending than that? Let's be real. You need an ID to drive, to fly, to buy a beer, even to purchase some cold medicines. Whites can do it, but blacks can't? Tell me again who the racists are? One more example. It's conservatives who push for school choice, which would allow all parents, not just wealthy ones, to decide where their children attend school. Tuition vouchers, charter schools, These are conservative initiatives. Those on the left fight these reforms at every turn. It's the left that doesn't trust minority parents to select an appropriate school for their children. Why aren't the people who keep black children in failing schools the racists? At some point, maybe you'll start asking yourself like I did, who's really obsessed with race, the left or the right? And whose policies really hurt blacks? Maybe it's not who you think it is. I'm Derek Green of Project 21 for Prager University.